Happy Halloween, which is, I think, on Monday. Welcome to Core Office Hours. Today is the Halloween edition Q&A. Wherever you are calling in from, whether it be outside of the US or Texas, welcome. So Core Discovery, Core Office Hours brought to you by Core Discovery, which it is a design strategy framework. And we should talk a little bit about that today. It's in one of the questions, actually. It talks a bit about this, where you combine the brand by defining the essence of who someone is, the goals, the business goals, and you define who it's for, the user, all in one fail swoop or one big swoop. What's the mission? For me personally, and the mission of the system is to empower creative leaders, period. And through that, we can transform global businesses because design has the power to do that. I mean, we can design a better future. We are all over the world. These are some of the few locations. There's so many more. And we should begin adding them to this. The agenda for Core Office Hours is super simple. Today, we're only doing QA. It's dropping in, which will be 15 minutes, and everybody gets to do that. The questions, the ones that you came to ask, but also we have some from having sent them out ahead of time. And the upload, which at the end is what did we get out? It's we are each other's teachers. It's like a circular learning process. The sharing rules are share your own, no advice per se, just share your own experiences. This is how it was for me, or this is an experience I had, or a story, or here's a story about somebody else and how they did it. Usually that's the best way to share versus saying, Bobby, you should do it this way. Which, you know, we're experts only in what we've experienced. At least that's my point of view. So share from the I. And here we go. Let's do the drop-in. The drop-in, your name, location, what you do, and one thing you love about the fall, this season particularly, and I'll model this. My name is Jose Caballer. I am in South Carolina right now, usually in LA, but today I am en route to Virginia on Monday to a conference called Mighty Dream Forum, which is hosted by the artist Pharrell. Or by Pharrell, the artist Pharrell sounds weird. And they have a music.com Web3 stage, and I am going to be facilitating or moderating a couple of the panels on that. Keone was originally doing one of them, and he can't make it from Lisbon, so I'm going to be doing it, and it's going to be cool. But what do I like about the fall? What do I do? I'm a designer, UX designer. We took the Ray Dalio's principles assessment the other day, and it was like, I forgot what I came out like, entertainer, impresario, and something else. Got to take this again. But yeah, creative entrepreneur is my favorite way to describe it. I'm a designer who focused on building software, but I really didn't want to continue just working in services. I want to expand that and started doing YouTube in 2012, actually, a couple of years before I started the school, and before this, 5 years or so before the school became the future. One thing I love about the fall, it's a little bit chilly right here right now. And when I drove in, all the trees were turning red. My brother drove me from the airport, and there's parts of the fall that I don't like, but you know, like it gets kind of cold and darker, and my body automatically goes into hibernation mode. Like I'm like, okay, rest and relaxation and eating. But I do like the way that the seasons change on the East Coast, where in California we have like a perpetual summer. It's always 73 and sunny. That's it. And I will pick Bobby Robinson, and then you pick somebody.
Hey everybody, my name is Bobby Robinson. I'm here in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm a web strategist. I've been self-employed for almost 15 years. Design, and for 25, Core has taken my business from 0 to 6 figures in the past several years. what I like about the fall, I like it's cold because Texas is like hot, like 99% of the time. So we have a little rain today and it's cold, and I love it. I am complete. I want to pick Nicholas.
Hello, everyone. So I'm currently based in Colombia. I'm currently in Cali, not the US. So there's like a worldwide salsa competition that's going on here, and really into salsa lately. So that's what I'm doing here. Also, my girlfriend lives here, so doing two things at once. What I do, I've worked in content strategy for like 3 to 4 years. And last month, I went through core, loved it, and kind of assembling a new process. And basically in the early stages of actually packaging it as a service and getting those first clients for something that maybe is not seen at all in the tech world. What I love about the fall, it's very funny because there's not really fall here. And I have traveled to many countries, but I never do it in the fall. So I don't really have a reference. I've been to the US, Canada, and other Latin American countries, but never in the fall. So it's probably windier and colder, and that sounds amazing, but that's about it. I'll pick Todd.
Thank you, Nick. So, where are we? Boom, boom, boom. Hi, I'm Todd. I am in Los Angeles. Jose and I go back, way back, to early stage in our careers in digital. I'm a business guy, an entrepreneur, filmmaker, and like to explore the art of the possible, I guess. And what do I like about the fall? I like the thing in Los Angeles, despite the fact that we have great weather, is that we then get cold nights starting in the fall, and I like that warm day, cold nights contrast. So. Let's see. Next, Angel.
Thank you, Todd. And hello, everyone. My name is Angel Guadarrama, originally from California as well, down in the Riverside area. Travel around the world a little bit. Right now, I'm in Salt Lake City, still making my way down to Mexico. Hopefully, I'll be seeing Alejandro there soon as well. So a little bit about me. Brand strategist, exposing myself to different ways of thinking. Through design. I think of myself as just being someone who's always a student, while also leading people to better realities. So that's the power I think of design has. I also think that language also has. I think design is a equivalent of language, except made visual. And I know language is incredibly important in the way that we see and translate and experience reality. Some of the things I like about fall, man, I mean, just look at this jacket. I mean, you can't say you don't like jackets like this, all fuzzy and stuff. No, this is, I genuinely, I just like being able to just style out. Spent time in Italy, spent time in Japan. I've really, really enjoyed looking at how they kind of combine different elements together. I think summer is the weather to dress down, to wear, whatever you want, be very casual. But I think fall come winter, it's really about how much clothes you can put on and actually still make sense. So I always find that really interesting. Last things about me, core. Started with core very recently. I find that core is probably the best thing next to sliced bread in my life, simply because it kind of gives it kind of gives me it provides me the opportunity to show up as a similar to like what a doctor is. It kind of gives me the ability to diagnose versus just being an order taker. And I think it really starts with core, kind of understanding the project and understanding the processes, as well as understanding what they actually need for the project. And if anybody's listening to this who has yet to purchase core, the time you should have bought was yesterday. The next best time is today. So I'm super happy that Jose has been able to provide such a powerful curriculum with the future. Future is the best thing that's I think ever happened to designers. So looking to share my experience, jump and collaborate with anybody here. Lots of great talent, Nicholas, Bobby, Todd. Looking forward to listening to Akin and seeing what they also have to offer. So pleasure meeting everyone. And yeah, pass it over to Akin. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we can, brother.
Okay. My name is Akin. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I'm a UI visual designer, and I'm currently freelancing on and off, working as a contractor. Right now, I don't have any projects, but I figured out that I got a little bored from UI, and I'm not a UX designer, quote unquote, but I try to understand the UX side of things also. And currently, I'm leaning towards more visually stronger projects like game UI as personal projects and improving my skills. But what I realized is they are usually being built in some other tools than UI UX design tools like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, and I'm looking into that and fun and personal projects, etc. And what I like about fall, actually August was a little too hot in Istanbul, and I was looking forward for weather to become warmer, and it is almost cold here. We started using blankets, etc. But my favorite part about fall is, which I don't have many favorite stuff about fall, to be honest, but dry leaves and kind of personal ASMR experience of walking over them. So who's left? I think Alejandro, right? Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Akin. So yeah, my name is Alejandro. I'm a creative entrepreneur. I like that as well. From Costa Rica, and I'm currently in the middle of launching a business, basically more based on web. And yeah, core has been awesome for me. I never experienced fall in my life. I've never been in one of those countries. And so what I like about this season is the Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. It's really cool. Although last year when I was there, I was trapped in an island with COVID. So I'm pretty much better than a year ago. So I enjoyed that I'm healthy this fall. So.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's it. Let's you can drop into the chat if you need to. So we had Akin, we had Angel, we had Alejandro, we had everybody, Todd, everybody's gone. So are there any questions here before I switch over to the Q&A, the questions that were submitted in advance?
So questions like the ones that people already submitted, is that it?
Did you submit your question already? Because what I'll do is I'll just, actually, I didn't drop them into the, actually I could drop them into the, I could definitely drop them into the, actually no, I'm just gonna like switch my tabs here in my, because I have them open, I have the survey open. All right, there's 5 questions that were pre-submitted. Do you have one that was already submitted here?
No, I got a call and I forgot.
Okay, but do you have any that like any before I go into these? And you guys can answer these actually too.
Sure.
Angel, let's have Angel too. Go ahead.
I'm unsure. I'm unsure if this is a question I can ask, but I just wanted to hear more about your experience, kind of pitching core for more of a tech kind of scene, like B2B. Like I've gone through core, listening to you and Kiani and the other core members, like all replays for like the last month, and I just remember listening to you say that it's a little bit tougher and that you make some changes to your process when it comes to like more of a B2B scene. So I'd like to hear more about how you've gone about pitching those.
Sure. And I know, Bobby, you also do a lot of B2B, so that'd be interesting to hear your point of view. I'll be briefish. Since a version of what is now core was the process that we used at our agency, at my agency, the group, when we were, approached by a B2B customer, or in general, very seldom did we weren't positioned to go out and just do strategy like some people do. When there's nothing wrong with that. You're just a strategy firm. If you're a designer who just position yourself as just a strategist, sometimes that's a bit challenging because people don't perceive you as such. They look at it like, well, you're a designer, you're not a business person, you can't do that. B2B companies are challenging in my experience in general because of the fact that their primary sources of sales are sometimes either the salespeople themselves, who sell to either, in some cases, distributors, in some cases direct, in some cases there's e-commerce involved, but the people are not too fond of marketing and things that they think are fluffy, and there's always a little bit of conflict between the two. I've even experienced it to where what we came in to do was to facilitate the fact that marketing and sales and the C-level business objectives just weren't happening because there was already too much and they couldn't get online and do what needed to be done in digital. Keep it in mind that the digital space, and Todd would remember this, Razorfish did the business strategy, the marketing, the creative, and the tech for projects. It was one of the first fully integrated type of consultancies. It's taken a long time for that to become more of the norm. So now companies like Accenture, who have acquired a lot of creative companies, PwC, McKinsey, they went on in the last 10 years, they've been on shopping sprees of creative agencies, advertising, digital especially, to integrate that into that. But the leadership are still business people, if that makes sense. So in conclusion, because B2B firms can be sometimes more business driven or driven by, let's say, sales, the way that I've always changed, there are things that are changes to the pitches. I'll give you a very specific example. In one case, the person who approached us was the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and who had seen some of our content, who was on our mailing list, who was referred by somebody and came to our office on his own and was very transparent. He's like, here's the problem I'm having. I have my engineers internally. We're trying to do XYZ digitally. And in this case, it was, they were doing a lot of figuring out how to deal with their e-commerce online, obviously online, but for a B2B company, e-commerce at that time, this was a while ago, wasn't a priority. And he told us who all the stakeholders were and who all the players were, et cetera. And the sales job was really to their engineers and to their sales force. And he gave us an insider point of view. So if you have an insider, that's great. So when we came in we worked on a deck with him, a short deck, but a deck with him with exactly what the problems or challenges are in doing B2B e-commerce. Like it has to be sometimes behind like some sort of like, you know, private access because it's not like consumer retail e-commerce. There needs to be other things, you know, services, and you need to both mediate between the sales force, because you don't want to also, what do you think the salespeople are going to be afraid of? What, you're introducing e-commerce and somebody can come in here straight. So politically, there was a huge fight internally where they were getting blocked, you know, they were blocked, the sales force and the tech. The tech people were more aligned with the sales team. The sales team did not want digital to come in because they were going to lose their sales. And they were going to get like a robot, basically a website to do their work. So they politically fought and they were winning. So we basically had to address that right away at the beginning. You know, we're here to make tools for you to make your job easier. We're not here to take away sales. We're not here to kill your baby. We're not here to, like, if we do our job right, you will make more money, you will be happier as salespeople, etc. And I directly address them. What are the biggest challenges you have that you think that the web can do? And they were like, oh, you know what, it would be great to do that. I saw this company, they have this, that company did that. So you just basically attacked your biggest enemy by saying like, look, we know that you're afraid and that you're fighting us. We're here to help you and tell us what you need. That was how we closed the sale, basically. So you really need to know your customer. I never use core as a name. I don't, if that's the case and you go into that crowd and you start selling strategy and process and how important it is and design, how important it is, you're going to get tomatoes thrown at you. You're not there to, you know, sell strategy or to sell design. You're there to solve their problems. So just acknowledge it, that B2B companies don't necessarily aren't, or you obviously don't want to call their baby ugly, but you want to say, we understand that this might, what are the biggest challenges you have? How can we help you solve them? And that's it, without emphasizing the process or anything like that. I don't know if that was at all. Was that helpful? How was that? That's
Yeah, it was extremely helpful. I actually think that because of the fact that what I've been doing before core has been very business oriented, I'm not planning to sell core by itself, but actually merging both processes. So I think I will have that issue. And something that was really encouraging was to not hear that maybe these crowds don't like, for example, workshops, because it's very rare for the people who do what I do to sell workshops, like to just go a mural. But you didn't say anything about workshops, so I'm assuming that you have never had an issue, and that's very encouraging. So yeah, thank you. It's extremely helpful.
You're welcome. I hide not hide, like I'm not gonna workshop, instead of calling it a workshop, is a work session, and to figure out what the challenges are, and we're gonna whiteboard it remotely. So when you get in the room and you can use the whiteboard, great. So look, hey guys, are you open to do a work session to figure this out? And you guys can come up to the board and, like, you know, talk us through your problems. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. It's not a workshop. Because if they think that they're just getting a workshop, but you're not going to really solve their problems, they're like, we can do that on our own, or like, you know, don't waste our time. Like, sell the results, not the workshop. It's, we're going to get you results. We're going to do it in a work session. When's your schedule available? You know what I mean? Unless that's all you're selling and it's just the workshop. That's
I think you're downplaying the term, to be honest. My point of view, right, is like, you can call it whatever you want, right? It's what is it, to your point, is like, what is the objective? What goals does it achieve, right? And, you know, I find that talking to the client about, like, what hurts, you know, what's a challenge for you guys? And okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, got it. Have you ever done, want to call them workshops, working sessions, you know, exercises, whatever you call them, that help you frame all that up so that you have answers at the end. So you have and you know, way core is structured is that it has, there are deliverables, at the end that are defined, and that for be able to say to the client, wouldn't it be helpful if out of a series of exercises, out of a workshop, out of whatever it is, that we had a roadmap to drive ahead that was prioritized based on your business model, your business goals, and the rest.
That's a good point. Don't fret on whether you call it a workshop or not. Just I get it.
If you know that they hate the term, right? Oh man, not another workshop. I'm not saying like
true,
right? But just because one client doesn't like the term doesn't mean another client doesn't like it. But you take a temperature of the room, but be focused. Don't worry so much about the words. Be focused on what you're delivering, and that actionable. This will get us to an actionable set of steps forward that are going to be about working towards solving your problems.
Beautiful. Thank you, Todd. That's super good insights. I love that. I love the dynamics of like, okay, there's this point of view, but there's also this point of view. This is great. Angel, what's the question? You have your hand up.
Thank you again. And just to mention, I don't sell core as something separate. I charge it as part of strategy in general. So it's actually part of the curriculum. That's one way of doing it too. Very simple. So today was a really interesting day because I just got off the call with with some of my clients that I'm going to be working with who's targeting specifically Web3. And, I asked them, can you give me a feedback on the core? I call it something else, but to us, it's core. I asked them, what are some of the improvements that I can do? And one of the things they mentioned was, and this is my thing, some clients don't have 4 hours to do core, so we break it up into certain sessions. So I'm still applying the core as a curriculum. What I found is that it's taking me about 4 to 5 sessions separately. So it's actually close to about 10 hours of calls and all of this stuff. And I've noticed that, Jose, you don't do that. Your stuff is very much almost like a crash course of just catching up to what the brand is or what the company is. How do you? I know that you have a timeline, and I've applied that. My thing is, when I apply that timeline and I go through it quickly, I don't get the same efficacy as I would if I just spent time and listened to them talk and we talk back and forth. So I'm curious to know.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
What is your experience with cutting things down, but also keeping the same quality? How do you maintain that as you kind of progressed from just starting it the first time to, let's say, your 100th time that you've done core? What was that process like?
I want to give an opportunity if there's anybody else who has that, who wants to answer a little bit of that. I thought I saw Bobby raise. You want to try I'll give mine last.
Basically what I do is I created a process, and the process is incorporating core because I sell web. So how can I amplify web and incorporate core? So I had to come up with a process, and then there's a timeline, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The bigger the company I've worked with, that longer those phases kind of stretch out. So it could be anywhere from a week, it can be anywhere from a month or 2. And their stakeholders, a lot of people have a lot of questions. So like even when you're in phase 1 to 2, that can extend out. So I would say just kind of measure the client, and then give yourself a time. Say, hey, this phase is 90 minutes. Anything past this time, I charge, $220 an hour, whatever, That way they can also understand like, hey, my time is valuable and I don't have, this can't go 6 months, So things have to end to a point. So we need to keep going and keep the project going. That's how I do it.
And when you do that, how is this So you actually have your own strategy course. I'm assuming you have your own way of pushing all of this through. So you're taking bits and pieces of core and you're adding it to your strategy deck, essentially.
Yes, like say for example, phase one would be consultation, and that's kind of the discovery phase of trying to figure out who's the stakeholders, who's the business owners, what department I'm going to be working with, and then try to make sure that everybody, not just like the stakeholders and the decision makers, but the care on accounting, because sometimes things have to go through accounting and some things have to go through legal. Make sure that all those people are in the room. So normally that's like phase one. Phase two is kind of like, that's the part where we start doing like brand strategy, and we start doing like brand guidelines and picking colors and fonts, and you see what I mean? That's how I kind of break it out in the past couple of years. I've tried different methods, and this like breaking in core into that, doing the core session. Like I said, it can go really fast. It can go like within like 2 hours. We can do core, or it could take sometimes a week, because people come back and they change their mind. Like, oh, I really think it's this, and but that timeline is still there on the contract that says past 90 minutes is $220 every hour. That's how I break it down.
Okay, got it. I think what I'm just hearing a lot of is that I just need to get more reps in, which is good for me. I like that. I know for my clients, not everybody has a month to do this stuff, and I definitely try to get this stuff done within 2 weeks. So it's definitely a push for that.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to be working on the strategy and incorporating core more into my strategy as well. I think. Yeah,
one thing I always prefer is that I'm schedule driven. Like, I have a schedule and I have to keep a schedule, and we have to stay on task on the schedule, because nobody wants to get charged more. So when you keep bringing that up, like anything past this time is this amount of money, and 10 hours more is going to cost you this much. And it kind of brings things in perspective, where now the department heads and the business owners are like now pushing their people to get things done quicker,
I have a feeling that you kind of, because you're schedule driven, you kind of push people as quickly as possible. What happens how do you determine if it's something that you're doing that's slowing them up, or how do you determine that? For instance, I notice that I like to talk a lot, just what I do, but it also gets people thinking.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to that, I say, okay, we're going to take a period break, and it's normally like 3 to 5 days if they have to get assets to me, like pictures, videos, and it's taking them longer than they thought, or they're trying to do like a corporate picture of everybody on there. I take a 3-day break and to say, okay, once you guys get all these assets in the Dropbox, then we will continue from that point. Because if I don't, that hourly rate, it's like a taxi. It's just going to keeps rolling in. So.
Got it. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby. And anybody else want to chime in? Todd, you want to chime in on?
Well, one of the things that Jose and I talk about pretty regularly is the concept of like core in flow, if you will, right? There's a lot of concepts within core that are really valuable on their own, and really valuable just as quite honestly, like in a business development conversation, where you're trying to help yourself, help your client understand the kind of value that you can bring, and the sorts of questions that are central to the different elements of core as an entire process. If you were to follow it, you can pick up just in a conversation. So tell me more about like X, right? Tell me more about what you know about your customer, right?
Exactly.
Right. It's like such a fundamental, question, and you learn a lot about how well they really even know their own business. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they need somebody like us to come in and ask that question. And it does get at a fundamental gap sometimes, where it's sort of like they may not understand their customer or all their customers, all that well. They may be really focused on a singular kind of customer, yet at the same time, they want to expand their sales. And part of expanding their sales is thinking about other customer segments besides the one that they've kind of, gone to, which is maybe the sweet spot. Or they may not even understand their business, right? Like, tell me more about your business model and all that sort of thing. And, they may, I formerly was at Disney, right? And one of the things that, people talk, I wasn't at the parks, but I dealt with folks at the parks pretty regularly. And, people would say, if people understand that Disney's in the business of experiences at the park, right? Everybody gets that. But somebody with a less fundamental understanding of a business might say, oh, well, they're in the business of selling park tickets, right? Well, no. I mean, yes, that's how they make their money, right? So, being able to pull on these strings or these levers in conversation or in define the process. Like, hey, in this case, I only have 2 weeks. I'm going to pick the 3 most valuable things out of core, and we're going to do those exercises in those 2 weeks. And then we'll leave the other things to pick up later, because I need to, more than anything, I need to understand these 3 things in order to push things forward. Some people are going to be very, very schedule driven, and you gotta acknowledge that, and you gotta, play along. And so you won't get everything done, but you can, then slot the things that you haven't gotten done yet in another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks, and use that to further inform, the work that they need done or you're doing for them.
A thing that I picked up from you, Todd, as well as from Bobby, is to keep core dynamic, right? It's take what you need. Doesn't have to be everything, but just take it as it comes. If somebody's schedule driven, especially like Bobby, it's your responsibility to push it as hard as
we're gonna do, Angel. We're gonna do it at the end when we do the upload. You can write down everything you got out of the different people that answered, and we'll do it during the upload, the lessons, which is a really good thing. I want to get Lara in because we have half hour. By the way, I do this during court too. It's like, hey, I got it. This is a great conversation, but we want to get everybody's input in, and that's a real key for facilitation. Also, I never do it alone. I always have another person in, so that if I'm taking too long, like I talk a lot, it comes around. Notice that in this, what I did is I reversed it and I said, Bobby and Todd, you guys go first, so that I wouldn't take up the whole time. And we have Lara and then Alejandro. Thank you, though. That's fucking amazing. And Lara might have asked the question in the chat potentially.
It did. She basically asking about change orders.
It's in the Q&A section.
I have a question: how you handle if a client changes his or her mind a lot, like having shiny object syndrome, because they're moving too fast, learning new strategies, 24/7 user testing. Yeah, that's a huge one. They aren't seeing results for fast because of many pivots. I'm assuming Lara does digital. Todd, you want me to talk about that? You want to? I just dealt with a friend helping her deal with that, but this is very common in digital, and when you're working with I hate to leave, but I've got even to attend 35 minutes. It was a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you, Nicholas. Awesome to have a core icebreaker session. It'd be awesome to have a core icebreaker session. Interesting. Let me try to be really simple for this, and then you guys can chime in. Thank you, Nicholas. Yep. So Lara, there's a couple of ways of charging a client. If you're doing a digital project that does require a lot of pivoting and a lot of changes in how you approach, let's say we did some user testing and now we have to change a bunch of stuff, etc. Either A, you have to really have a very large fee so that you can fit a lot of things in it without losing money, and B, be tracking. And as you grow as a creative, or as a service provider, you can do that, meaning increase your fees to where when you deal with really famous designers, they're very expensive because they're just going to do their genius, etc. Sometimes it's called value-based value-based pricing. But what if you're simply like, let's say, UX designer working with a startup, and you don't want to have to be working 14-hour days because they're changing their mind every 5 minutes, right? Then what I've seen some UX people that are senior but work with startups do is say that they're charging them hourly, and that whatever amount of hours they want, they'll do, but they're going to get billed for it. That immediately stops the client from like just willy-nilly changing their mind a lot. A lot of CEOs have a lot of ADD, and that's part of like, well, whether it's, forget about the diagnosis, they have the symptoms of it, meaning like they change their mind, they don't remember things. So I personally, the way that I managed that, Core was a way of doing that. But in the longer term, and I was sending this to a friend of mine yesterday or the day before, I send her how some of the structural components of how our contracts were structured, which were what I called fixed fee variable scope, meaning, fixed fee variable scope, or pre-bought hours. So Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, you're getting X amount of people, but in this case, I'll say you're just one person. You're getting me for these many hours in a 1 month period, or try to break it down to something a little bit better or easier to calculate the math. And every 2 weeks costs you this much for these many hours. And if you need more, or there's change requests, etc., it's going to cost you more. But then the question becomes, were the hours incurred that were extra your fault because you're not getting what they're asking for, or their fault because they're being wishy-washy and not asking, exactly what they want? So that becomes the tricky part. So what I told my friend was, write down what a success criteria looks like in advance, and I helped her put that into their contract. And I gave her the template for our approval forms and our change request form. Finally, I'm going to tell you how I dealt with that specifically with Core and using the Core process. Number one, objective for the project was in it. And if I show you a proposal, one of our proposals, it says, this is the objective. This is what we're trying to do with the business. We're trying to improve the user experience, trying to increase sales. We're trying to do this. We're going to try to increase users to this amount, etc. Whatever the objective is, the highest level possible objective. Then B, we're going to do the following activities, a list of the activities. We're going to do user testing. We're going to do this to get to that. At the end of each of those things, of course, you give them the results and you tell them what you're going to do with those results, right? One example, if you're deciding something from scratch or doing a redesign, is we're going to show you 3 directions, 3 stylescapes. And at the end of after we present them, the client says, I like this about this one and this, and I don't like that. I like this one about this one and I don't like that. Then we present one more time and we say, hey, here's all your feedback incorporated. We showed you 3. We incorporated your feedback. And some designers hate this because it sounds like you're Frankensteining the solution and your point of view is not in it. You know what? Fuck your point of view. We're consultants and we're getting paid. And I know that's a horrible point of view to have. It's very like, it's very, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to judge my point of view. That's how I did it. And when they gave the final feedback on the final stylescape, and this is just for design, right? We gave them a form. It was a simple form. The form said, very similar to Bobby Robinson. The form said, by signing here, you're approving the direction, and that's what we're going to do. If you change your mind, you will be incurred. You will be issued a change request. Is that clear, Mr. Person, or Mrs. Person? And if they don't sign it, we stop the project. Period. And then you have to play chicken. So you have to have what we would do was at every milestone, they had to sign this is great. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to move forward. And it didn't allow them to claw back and come back and change their mind.
The challenge as for individual or small agencies is that you have to play both kind of the account relationship role as well as, your creative and design role. Those are, to be perfectly honest, those are incredible skills to learn to pair. They really are. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, but it's, you quite honestly, you develop, my experience is that people develop respect for you for behaving as a business person, you know, laying stuff out as like, hey, in the creative and design part of the world, this is the rules. But in the business engagement part of the world, this is the rules. And I'm sure you understand, you're in business too, right? I can't, give you unlimited amounts of time for a fixed amount of a fee. That just would not be good business on my part. And if I were doing that, for somebody else and not for you, as another client of mine, you would be not very happy with me. You're not getting the value out of me that you need because I'm giving it all this other client. So, it takes some practice. It takes some practice, and get comfortable with it. And talking to folks like us, role playing it, or just sort of how do you, this is the exact situation. What would be, sometimes it's like takes a turn of a phrase, and just sort of like learning like, oh, got it. Change order. And that in your initial agreement, right, that, I'd say, hey, this stage, we're going to define, these are going to be milestones. And at this milestone, everything downstream from that is going to depend on this milestone being agreed upon, and any changes after that will result in a change order. And you just begin getting in their brain that change orders are part of the gig, if they're going to, make a decision and then change their mind after.
Thank you, Todd. That was very insightful. Was that helpful? That was a lot there. I mean, I think that covers a lot of really, okay, great insights. Yeah, change orders are awesome. By the way, the flow kit, or this is me brainstorming, Todd, could just be all the account stuff, like change orders, like little things, contracts, and like, it's funny, it's called flow, but it's all the stuff.
Yeah, well, we've conceived of it mostly from a project management perspective, but it could become the intersection of project management and account for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a great. Any other questions? There's only 2 that are really relevant in the questions that got submitted. Some of the other ones are like about how to translate color, how to use the color psychology, how to choose packaging stuff, which is more of design. There is a very specific core question from Christina Tectana that I wanted to, actually, I'm going to put the question out and like have Bobby or somebody who's a very design practitioner in general. The question is when I have a returning client that you had already done core for, you did attributes, user profiles, etc., and they return to do a website project now after the first project was more identity based. Do I need to do core again, even though I did a very brief one with the client at the beginning, or should I continue with what's done and just start the website project? Like returning engagements and returning projects. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I will. My question would be, how long was the first time the core was done? Because if it's like within a couple months.
You said it was brief. Oh, how long ago was it? Ooh, good question.
Yeah,
good question.
So what I normally do, because this happened, and I think I talked about it in another core session, was a construction company. I did the first core, and a year later they came back to me like, hey, we're pivoting from concrete, and we're going to be doing solar panels. So right there, with a year later, it's like everything's kind of changed. Everything they were trying to sell, they're still selling concrete, but they decide to sell solar panel as their main focus on their business. So I would say every 6 months, business don't pivot that fast, but that's just my experience. It's like a year later is when I redid core, and everything changed. All their dynamics changed, all their ask, everything was changing. So I say every time that the client comes in, it's been a period of time, I would always recommend to do core again, just to make sure that realigned.
That's a very, very good way of looking at it. That's the perfect question. Like, how long has it been? There's also the issue of modularity. My nephew was showing me how his dad and him organized all their his Legos into colors, etc. And this is something I just want to repeat. It's a modular system. There's 6 exercises in the current version. There's going to be potentially more in the next version, and I'm going to write into that specifically that metaphor of it's like Legos. You have to make a judgment call as to what the audience needs, and or in this case, what does the company need? For example, Christina, if you're coming back and you were emphasized or focused on identity in the first engagement, and now you're focused on web, the thing you need the most information about for that is user profiles. So if your user profiles feel complete, great, but gauge what you need. And this is not a sophisticated, this is a practitioner's experience level issue. Like if you really know how to use user profiles in order to define the functionality, and you do it in a way that is effective and etc., then great. And if you think, one thing is just show it to them, say like, hey, these are the user profiles we did for the first engagement. If you did them, do these look right, or is there any changes you want to make? And they go, oh, they look okay, but there's a few changes, and just update them. And then do the same thing for the attributes, and do the same thing for whatever other exercises you did. Do we need to update them? It's your judgment call. That's the best way I can answer that question. Exactly what you said, Bobby. Ask how long has it been, and then just ask them, show them and ask them, like, did any of this information change? It's just data. Core is just data to make decisions. So if it changed, change it.
Yeah. And I charge every time I do core. I recharge.
Nice. I like that. You're gonna be Charge Bear. That's gonna be your nickname. For like, yeah. But it is very true, and Todd is very good at that because his experience has been, within the agency world and the corporate world, being that person who's the account person. One thing I said about Todd early in our conversations was, it was something interesting. It was the group, my agency did about 2 or 3 projects with Disney that he was managing, which were also had other partners like, tech partners, etc. Like different components were done. And my observation was the projects were very smooth because all the partners were great and they knew what they were doing, but you have an insider's view on what an agency or a tech partner is going through. So you have empathy for that, and you can mitigate it and mediate it from the context of, what the project is needed. Where an executive at Disney who has no experience working on the agency side is just going to say, this is what I want, and this is how much I want to pay. And if not, and totally be, a pain in the ass. And that helps when you know what everyone goes through, especially at a financial level. It's just really helpful. What other questions do we have? It's 3:10.
Do we get all the ones on the spreadsheet?
The first one is, I get overwhelmed by the different frameworks and exercises and different ways to accomplish branding. And I don't know if that question is about core or about all the frameworks that are there, because there's a million. If anybody wants to take that on. Hi, Hania.
I think you should start on that one, Jose.
Sure. I will start on that one very simply. There are a lot of frameworks. That is very true. I'll do it from 2 points of view. One from core point of view, and then from what other frameworks are out there. From the core point of view is you don't have to do all of them. You need to really gauge the audience and figure it out. I sometimes do more than others. Those are just all like modular exercises. The way that the current core kit is designed, the first 3 are the most important. The other 3 are things like, okay, if you did user profiles, you can do user journeys, and that's like the impact narrative. If you did user needs and you did business objectives, how do you merge those? So data matching is simply, all right, if this is the user need and this is the business objective, what are the things in the middle of that the user would like and that would increase and that would accomplish the objective? That meet me in the middle, like it's like King Solomon, cut the baby in the middle. But really interesting ideas come out of that. If you know, and then it's that middle part in the Venn diagram of brand, user, and business objectives. Is the business, if the business objective is in the on the revenue side, let's say, to whatever, I'm going to make it really, really silly, increase sales, and the brand is about natural, and the user, one of the needs the user has is, you know, they're overwhelmed. Figure out a way to like charge money for grounding in nature and making that a part of your offering or your service. I'm making that up, but just to make the point. The second vector is there's so many frameworks out there, and it takes time for you to learn them, and it takes time. There's different points of view. So we are now in a point in history where, you know, every person can create their own framework, their own beliefs, their own philosophy, their own religion, whatever you want to call it. And if they tell enough people about it on TikTok, you know, and people believe it, they say, well, buy my framework because it's, you know, and then you get videos, you know, on YouTube to say my proven framework, all these people believe in it, etc. And that's really ultimately, you know, what you believe in and what works for you is what works. So I would just, you know, test stuff out. Like that's how I do my life. Like I test out all this stuff. There's not a cult I don't like to join, to just check out what their stuff is. And then you go in and out, and sometimes you stay, sometimes you don't. Most of the times I don't stay, but explore different things. And the overwhelm might have something to do with, you know, at the end of the day, how much time you invested in understanding it, and if it's for you or if it isn't. But yeah, that's my thoughts. If anybody wants to add to that, that's great. Anybody want to add to that?
I think the thing that you said at the end, I was just typing this. I think the thing you said at the end is the essential thing. Is like, it's the one that works, you know? So there are tons of them, but it's one that works for you. It might be, hey, I'm most familiar with this one. It may also be like what works for you given the situation with your client, you know, or the problem you're solving or whatever it is in a branding perspective, right? And there are, that's probably the most essential. You know, there are, circle back to the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about B2B clients, like cultures in B2B companies might be very different in a B2B company than in a consumer products company, or, you know, in a media company or something like that. And that may be one of the more essential levers as to which, you know, branding framework, identity process you think about that's right for them. So.
Well, you brought something up interesting in that and in what I said, I'm realizing something that's really important. If there was a class that, or a course or a workshop or whatever that I would want to teach at one point, and it's how to learn based on your personality, right? There's different types of people. There's people who learn visually. There's people that learn by doing. There's people who need to process. That's one of the reasons why I'm obsessed with psychometric assessments, because that kind of determines what kind of personality you are. And if you notice the people that are attracted to the system and to coming on to, you know, our calls, etc., for the most part, not all the time, they're the people who are most similar to me in you know, and I always talk about ADD, I talk about scattered mind, I talk about all these things. If it's somebody who really wants something more like linear and you know, process oriented, etc., you know, it doesn't necessarily seem to work. And then one of the questions, because it's kind of scary when people are a little too loose. So this is like core, and the system is built for hip hop and for like people from the diaspora to some degree, because that's how we roll, right? That's how we flow. And you see it in the nature of the content and in the nature of what we're doing. And I'm saying that because I'm reflecting in context to, after this, I have to work on 2 panels that I'm doing at the Mighty Forum conference, or Mighty Dream Forum event in Virginia that's being hosted by Pharrell, which is, the context of it is, you know, a conversation about, you know, what we do, creativity, etc., in the context of people of color. Now, well, I am going to have to contextualize one of the panels relative to that. So culture matters, right? So the framework that works for you. Core was for me and for the ADD CEOs of startups. Like, we have no time. They don't want to waste or spend a lot of money on doing like a long discovery, process and strategy. We aren't like, McKinsey or like a big consultancy. We need this stuff done because we're presenting, to whatever soon, or we need to increase sales or whatever. So that's why Core was so fast and why I did Core so fast. But you can take your time to do discovery. And I've done it in like months and with a bunch of other kind of things that need to be done that you know how to do as a creative. And I've done it in a day or less. I've done it in a couple hours by truncating what exercises you do, etc. All right, that's a contextual, interesting kind of insight. Do we want to do any other questions from the
Todd? There.
Okay, so what is the best process to choose a color for a brand? Because what I have done, when I have done when the brand attributes exercise, I then put the words into Adobe Color actually. It's typed out Cooler, and I used to call it Cooler. It's actually Adobe Color. And make custom palettes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do it like that all the time.
I would say that it really depends on the goals, the positioning. For instance, if they want to blend in a little bit more in the industry, then I would say try to see what the industry is doing and kind of use similar colors. But if they want to totally differentiate from their competitors, then try to see what the competitors are doing in terms of colors, and then pick a color that is not being used. That might be one of the strategies to select the color.
It's a great insight. Look at trends, look at the psychology of color. I use that all the time. And the psychology of color is not very variant, meaning like one psychologist is not going to have one point of view on what the colors mean. There's multiple variations of interpretation, depending on who the data is coming from. But there's books about the psychology of color. It's very familiar. If you take color theory, there's colors that are warm, your colors that are cool, that there's primary colors, there's tertiary colors. The color spectrum is limited. So then the science of color is even trippier, because color, music, and frequency, which is music, right? Or it's like everything is a wave. It's a particle wave. That's the one science class I took at Art Center, which was it was a science class, but it was really, okay, here's how color waves work. And color waves affect the mind differently relative to what frequency it is. Meaning there's frequency, like, for example, when a DJ drops the beat or when you wait for it, before that, it's and then people are waiting for the dum 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 dum. I mean, if you've ever been to a festival, you get that. Those are very different feelings, right? Color does that too. There are colors, and there's like dum 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 colors also. I think I should just do all of these with this Dracula costume. This is just way funnier. Anyway, that's my thought. You're doing it right when you're using Adobe Cooler. Put in the attributes, see what you get. But begin to develop your own philosophy as to what you believe colors are. Like if one of the attributes is we are bright and optimistic and like innovative, and we believe in love, your palette is not going to be black, blue, and brown, in dark hues, right? Remember, there's also hue saturation. You're not going to have very desaturated, That's why the fall, which is colder, and the leaves change to brown, and you get oranges and browns, etc., versus bright colors, because also you don't want your you need to go into a bit of rest and hibernation. That's what the winter is for the tribe, is to celebrate the harvest, to rest until the spring, when everything lights up in color again, and you start singing when do birds suddenly appear. So that's the color has its reasons. Yeah. All right, Hania's here. So that to me, there's two colors, two questions around colors. How do you know your client brand has the wrong color? How do you know if your client's brand has the right color? And should I use color psychology, or what colors can mean when choosing new palettes for them? Or is that not necessary? I think I already answered both of those questions at the same time. Yes, use color psychology. How do you know it's wrong? I mean, there's like, yeah, that's really wrong. And then there's a subjective wrong. If you're a business consultancy and your color palette is like, you know, really bright and like feels it. So you said it, Alejandro, really well. Look at the competition, you know, and whether it is that you want to fit in or you want to be different than the competition. So like if I were to be thinking logically, yeah, how do you know what the brand color, when the brand color is wrong? Yeah, exactly. Hey Lara, what's a good place to start on Culture Index? Ooh, I like that.
She was mentioning Culture Index before, and I was just wanted to learn more.
Oh, which is interesting. It basically, when you look at aggregate data about what culture, different cultural, how do you know when a color is wrong, Bobby?
I kind of look at the type of business. So let's say a landscaping company, if they have like red, and you see their competitors, you know, there's not a lot of red on their trucks, you know, some like normally greens, browns, you know, some like pastel colors, but more than that, it's going to be those type of colors. So red's indicating me to like, this might be off, you know. I do that with a lot of other businesses like solar, same thing. It's they use pink. So pink, solar, you know, is it green, is it blue, something clean, something fresh with pink work. So I kind of bring those things in perspective when people are picking colors, because some of my clients do have really bad taste. And, you know, it's one of those things, it's subjective, right? So they love pink, but you know, is it going to work for the brand? You know, is it a personal thing? Is it gonna, are we building this to a brand where people are going to recognize it from, you know, standing like a feet away or 50 feet away, you know, type of thing. So, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And the question asked in the chat, and then we have to wrap up, you know, how do you build difference if, you know, everyone is blue in that industry? How do you stand out? So I'll tell you my point of view on that very briefly. And it is about culture. That's why Lara's point of view about the culture index is interesting, because in one culture, a color might mean something very different. Like all the let's say in Italy, all the landscapers use yellow. I'm making that up, but let's say that was the case, you know, then it's an acceptable color for that. I when I was doing the identity for Live Earth, which was a concert by the same producers of Live Aid, and Live Earth was Live Aid for the planet, where Live Aid was more during the AIDS crisis in the 80s, 70s actually, or early 80s. That's the famous concert when Freddie Mercury from Queen really like was at his height. So Live Earth, a big agency which will remain nameless, was doing pro bono work for them and had made a logo for them, which was the same concept from Live Aid. It was basically a brown leaf in the shape. So it was a leaf with a guitar stem, or actually, it was Live Aid for Africa, not AIDS. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, it was for Africa. You're right, because the logo for that one was Africa with a guitar stem. So the agency, genius creatives that they were, put a stem on a leaf because it's about the environment. But then if you read Al Gore's book, you know, the environmental, you know, the climate crisis issue is not about the trees. It's actually about, you know, global warming and like, you know, the container being, you know, heating up, and then we're going to get burned up. The trees will come back. Don't worry about that. We're the ones that are going to die. And Al Gore was actually part of Live Earth. But the client wasn't, you know, he wasn't like, he's a music producer. He's just like, he wants something that's looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, like the past. And he's older, you know, he was in his 60s. Not that matters. I'm not being ageist. So my client stakeholder, who's also been a really great coach on how to do consulting and all this kind of stuff. My approach was, this is a rock and roll concert. this has nothing, let's not make this into like, so I went and bought $500 to $600 worth of rock and roll books at they still were around at the time at the Virgin mega store this was in 2007, or at a big music mega store in Hollywood that had a whole section on music books. I bought the history of rock and roll, posters, concerts, a lot of awesome books. And I just love buying books anyway. So that was just, a bonus. And I took them to the office and I gave them to all the designers and we researched. And when you look at the books, what are the two colors in rock and roll? Black and red. Everything is black and red, black and red, black and red. And there's a little bit of blue maybe, but not really. It's just all black and red, which I'm wearing right now, right? This is like Dracula. So we did an identity that the type was black. We did an identity that was like blue, black, and a bit of red. Yeah. And we crafted it. I even did a Venn like what I call the MBA quadrant. And I said, rock and roll logos and rock and roll brands, and put all these images here, green stuff, like stuff for the environment. And what was interesting is that when you look at them all in aggregate and doing that research, you're just doing pattern recognition. Blue doesn't show up as much in green at that time. And my point of view was, especially because people like don't pay attention if it's like, oh, it's one of those like, tree hugging hippie stuff. I don't want to deal with that. Like, we're just bombarded by so many images. We don't want to just do that. So I said, my argument was, we want to have the message be delivered by the peanut butter that is rock and roll, and the logo itself was like in blue. And if you read Al Gore's book, he has a lot of images of that, like of the stratosphere and this beautiful, our firmament, the sky, and the client was like, so the tip that I got from my stakeholder was, let's print out a bunch of t-shirts with that logo on it, the logo we wanted to sell through, get approved. And we gave it to the producer's kids who were in the office as interns that summer. Yeah, and when we had ran into each other on the corner, I was having a conversation with the producer and his kid came up who was 17, and his dad's like, what do you think? Like, he was wearing the t-shirt. He's like, what do you think? He goes, it's awesome. And he walked away and his dad's like, all right, fuck it, let's approved. So yeah.
The one quick thing I just want to throw in about differentiating brands, right? Sometimes it's color, sometimes it's other things. I mean, one of the things that Jose and I return to a lot in conversation is we both worked at Razorfish. All the other companies that were the digital studio developer, product developers, agencies of that era, did these brands that were this very kind of like techie, sciencey kind of sentiment, science and viance and crap like that. And I give Jeff and Craig, founders of Razorfish, a ton of credit, because they basically came up with what I think of as a consumer brand kind of orientation in a space that was intended as a business, or is a business to business space. But why? I mean, people make the decisions. So why wouldn't they be more attracted to something that had sort of a consumer brand sensibility the way that Razorfish did, versus this very kind of cold vibe, that a lot of the other brands had. So it can be in the terms of color, but it can also be in terms of like a logo or a name, or naming, or changing the naming in some way to make it distinctive. Because in the end, it's always about differentiation. Like, how do I stand out from my competitors?
It's a good insight, and the only thing I'll add to that, and then Bobby, and then we'll do the upload, is that Thomas Mueller, who was the art director at the time, or creative director, whatever his title was at Razorfish, and I, since we were both from Art Center, I was like one of the first designers there, and so we had a pretty good relationship. Cancer Taurus, they get along well. He's German, I'm Puerto Rican. Like, it was very contrasty, but I basically, it's like jazz, you see I saw what he was doing, and I'm like, okay, this is a little crazy, because you look at the competition and you're like, they're all like way techy and very different, and he's doing some cool stuff. And I'm like, and then I had to do the first business development toolkit, like our brochures and the box we were sending it in, and we were brainstorming, and Thomas chose this like green, like that looked like a bit like baby puke, which now is super popular. It was like what do you call that green, like chartreuse-ish. And then we had blue, and then silver. Let's do silver paint, silver ink printing, and then I had this concept of like, you know, like a timeline or like a thing, and like, but let's cut it together. Let's like slice it. It was nuts. Like we were doing some really cool stuff, and the thing that it did is that, like you said, you're looking at it very like Todd is doing it almost like the academic business portion of it is like, we did a consumer looking brand for a consulting kind of environment, which is true. You know, IBM Consulting, McKinsey's, all those big systems integrators weren't doing like crazy cool stuff. And we were in New York and like Soho, like we were too hip for school. I mean, I was wearing jumpsuits to work, you know? So yeah, that really made the market, you know, it allowed the company to really thrive in a market. Though at first people thought we were just crazy, but we delivered, so it was good. Bobby,
real quick with color, just remind us, like 2022 in the digital space, ADA compliancy. So just make sure to read that manual of like not picking crazy colors like purple, because purple blind, you know, colorblind people cannot see, you know. So that's all
I just started dropping the purple a little bit, not too much, but in what we're doing. Anyway, this is a really great conversation. As always, it's funny, you know, I come into office hours a little bit like, oh my God. And then really the conversation with everybody, the participation, and with whoever comes, it's always amazing. So thank you guys for all sharing. You're all experts, you're all pros, and we're all figuring it out together. So I love that. I now, with the power vested in me by Zoom, I guess, propose that here we go. We do the upload. One thing you got out of today of value, and I will start with Angel. Oh, I'll go first. I count. Yeah, my insight was that I do love the remix. Like every person that shows up to core office hours, the questions, but also that we can all answer because we're all practitioners, really is interesting to read everybody's point of view or to understand it, because there is no fixed approach. The most important thing is you being attuned, or they call it read the room, ask the right questions, really understand the other person in our minds, because we think design is a technical thing and there's a right way. There is no right way. There's only the way that works for the person you're providing service to and for yourself. And it doesn't work. Because at the end, if you do something and it doesn't work and the business doesn't do well, that's not great, you know, because that design is a commercial activity in its current state, obviously, but we do have to incorporate things like planet and not losing your soul. And that's another conversation. We might start a brand called The System to do that. But all right, I will pick Angel. Sorry.
Thank you, Jose, for the just picking on me. A few things I got. I think I'm going to keep it down just to 3 points. Be dynamic with or just be able to use core not as necessarily as a stagnant piece of exercise framework, but to use it as a plug and play. I think I got that from Todd and as well as Bobby. I'm also kind of got a little tip right now from, I think, Bobby. He mentioned the ADA compliancy. I just did it right now, and I think I have some things to update. Ultimately, I'm just really happy that I was able to sit here, understand what you guys are talking about, and I'm looking forward to next time we're able to do this. So thank you again to everybody who came, pitching in your guys' knowledge, your wisdom. As a young designer, I'm looking forward to being more on these. So thank you to everyone who's been here and contributed.
Thank you for being here. You're awesome, by the way. Your flow is super tight. So I love your contribution, and come as many times as you would like to come. So I pick somebody for else to
I'm going to pass it over to Bobby. Bobby, thank you. Think you contributed a lot as well as Todd, but I definitely want to give it over to you.
This is Bobby again. My take is there's not one right way to do things. Do go through the process and learn and see what works for you and your business. And just stay open. Keep learning other frameworks and see what works. But stick with core. It's amazing. I am complete. Thank you. I want to pick Todd.
Thanks, everybody. Love these conversations. And it's really, really excellent to hear how everybody thinks about and uses and explores core and other frameworks too. It was, I think that's my, that's my insight, is hearing, I know how I think of it. I know how it works, how I think it works, but hearing how other folks apply it and learning from how they apply it, and where it really thrives, and where they go off the map to do something else on the way to achieving the goal for their problem or their project with their client and all that. So thanks for sharing all that.
Pick someone.
Oh, Hania.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking with me too. What I have joined late the conversation. Also, I love to be here. I have done core several times, and what I have learned is it helps really to be conscious about the differences. Also, what you want to express, what you want to communicate, and I guess help to clarify the direction, the path. This is also very useful. And in my case, help my area of work to communicate much better with the end customers, because science has been made to create knowledge, but in nowadays, science has to contact much better the society, and we have to work with other areas of knowledge to be all together, to communicate much better. And core is a very nice tool to do it. I'm learning from you how to go in this language,
Thank you.
Only to knowledge. We work with you because we are not the specialists, but at least to understand how you are working and how we can communicate much better our design as customers, to understand your potential as creators.
Thank you so much. Pick. Well, everybody's gone, I think.
Alejandro Calderon, yes.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Well, I really enjoyed the sessions because I've heard this before, that if you feel like the smartest in the room, probably you're not learning anything and you're not growing. Well, I feel the opposite here. I feel like I understand like 50% of what I'm hearing, and I love that, because that like pushes me to learn more and explore more and understand more. So I really love being part of this community. Thank you.
And then the last person, I think, is Zakin.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great session. I would say my main takeaway would be we are all professionals trying to make a living doing what we love, but that doesn't mean it is a work, it is a job. We have a life out of that, and defining boundaries and defining our space always matters, balancing all the relations. Thank you very much.
100%. And I'm going to read Lara's. I learned the following. One, you can do core tailored to what your client needs. It doesn't have to be linear. Two, we need to charge a higher amount to be able to sustain client processes that involve a lot of changes and we need to incorporate sign-off stages with identified success criteria at the beginning. That's super insightful. I think documenting these sessions and the insights is always a good thing because that kind of helps us develop products in the future or add to core, et cetera. And then three, how others use color in discovery. Thank you, Lara, for being here. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Happy Halloween later this week. I don't always celebrate Halloween, but when I do, it's with these really snappy filters. I'm really looking forward to, oh, there you go, Alejandro, that's pretty cool. Actually, let me see if I can pin you while I'm talking and we can say, oh, balloons. Everybody's having fun with these snappy filters. That's so much fun. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the community. I appreciate everybody. And every time we come to these, it is super impactful. And just a reminder that you're, like Keone pioneered, you're powerful. You can do anything you want. And together, I like to say this, and it's now in the new business cards, together we are the system, you know, by working together and collaborating to move our ideas and the world towards a positive place. We can do it together. And that's what core does. It aligns all the peoples. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the fall.
Thank you, Jose. I hope you rest.
Thank you, man.
Ciao, Jose. Nice to see you.
Ciao. Good to see you. Good to see you, Bobby. Good to see you, Hania. Thank you, Todd, as always, for producing.
Thank you for the meeting also. Bye-bye.